Welcome to our electricity and magnetism unit and concept one note. So we're going to start by talking about charge. Now, in class, we're going to do a little activity to help you explore these electricity concepts before we learn about them. But as always, for the sake of the video, we're just going to keep going with the notes. So first, a little overview, a little context that is necessary, especially if you are listening and your physical science class is structured like mine is, and we do the intro to physics units prior to doing the intro to chemistry. Now, if your teacher does the intro to chemistry units first, then this should be very familiar. But for all of you who are intro to physics first listeners, then this is some chemistry context you need in order to understand the basics of how electricity and electric charge work. So, matter. You have to know what matter is. Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space, and all matter is made of atoms. So an atom is the simplest form of matter. It is made of protons, which have a positive charge, which is why we can abbreviate them in our notes. Instead of writing proton, you can always write a lowercase p with the superscript positive sign. They're made of neutrons, which are neutral, thus a zero, and electrons, which have a negative charge. The protons and the neutrons are located in the nucleus of the atom. So it's a really, really dense central core of the atom. They're held really, really tightly together there. It is extremely difficult to separate them. Whereas electrons are in the electron cloud. They're really the greatest volume of the atom is in the electron cloud. That's what surrounds the nucleus. They are held there. In some atoms, they're held more tightly. In some, they're held more loosely, but definitely more loosely than the protons and neutrons in the nucleus. And how many protons there are, how many neutrons there are, how many electrons there are, determines a lot of the identity and the characteristics of an atom and helps us to know, what kind of matter it is and things like that. But for our purposes, for this unit, we're really going to be talking about those electrons. And when the number of protons or positively charged subatomic particles in an atom is equal to the number of electrons or those negatively charged subatomic particles in an atom, then that atom is considered electrically neutral. It does not have an overall charge to it. When that number is uneven, we would say that the atom is charged, and thus we would refer to it as an ion. Again, we'll be getting into that way more in our chemistry units. So like I said, electrons are bound. They're held in this cloud more tightly in some atoms and molecules than in others. And if those electrons move, then we get an imbalance of charge, and that's what causes something called static electricity. So I have a little video I'll show you in class about this, but we'll keep going for this video here. So static electricity is a charge imbalance that results in a buildup of excess electric charge on an object. So when objects with loosely held electrons, those kind of build up on the surface of that object, and this is where we can experience shock. That's what happens when the charge gets neutralized. So you may have experienced this before when you've gone down the slide on a playground, or maybe you've been babysitting a little sibling and they've gone down the slide and then they touch you and they shock you. Or it can happen when you pull a sweater out of the dryer and then you put it over your head and it shocks you. Those are different times when you've experienced static electricity. And we've also explored this in our stations that we're going to be doing in class, exploring electricity. Okay, so that's static electricity. Now, charges, this electric charges exert forces. Okay, and we see some rules, if you will, that we can use to kind of describe how electric charge will behave. Okay, so opposite charges attract, and we see that like charges repel. The force between these electric charges, okay, so whether that's an attractive force or a repulsive force, it depends on two things: the amount of charge and the distance between charge. Okay, so this might sound familiar to when we've talked about gravitational force in the past. which depends on mass and distance. Okay, electrical charges, which exert electrical forces, depend on how much there is, which is similar to mass, and then how close those things are together. So two things that are really far apart, they're not going to necessarily exert a force upon one another, whereas when they are close, they will. And again, if those charges are opposite, like positive, negative, then that force is an attractive force. If those charges are opposite, like they're like, or excuse me, if they're the same, if they're like charges, like two negative forces against each other or negatively charged particles, they'll have a repulsive force. Okay, now a third rule of thumb we can consider. Oh, and these two factors, can be summarized as Coulomb's law in its simplest form. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and your teacher may add on to Coulomb's law more than this, but that's just kind of the basics. Now, like I said, there's kind of three rules of charge, three things we see in terms of how charge behaves. First, the attractive force between opposite charges. Second, that repulsive force between like charges. And then third, the law of conservation of charge. So you may have seen so far in your physical science class the law of conservation of matter, or the law of conservation of energy. This is the same idea, just with regards to charge. So charge cannot be created or destroyed. It's only transformed. It only changes forms, which means that the net electric charge is always going to be constant. Okay, now let's talk more about these charges and how they can exert forces. Charges do not need to be touching to exert forces on each other. So if I want to exert a force on you, I'm going to have to touch you. I'm going to have to push you, to exert that force. Put my hands on your shoulder to push you. That is not the case with electric charges, okay? Because electric charges have an electric field. So the area that surrounds charged particles or charged objects can cause a force to be exerted on other charged particles or objects without touching them. Charges can act at a distance because of this electric field that it gives off. Also, the field can move the charges around an object near it. Charged particles placed within an electric field that a charged object has can push or pull by the force exerted by that field. So you saw this in several of the stations that we did. So this balloon, when we rubbed it on a cloth or on maybe your pant leg, it exerted then a charge. And then you could bring it near these tiny pieces of paper that were neutral, that were not electrically charged. And the field that surrounded the charged balloon was able to exert a force on this. And it was an attractive force that then attracted the pieces of paper to the balloon. That's something that we saw. Again, think about this in terms of what we've seen with gravitational force and how it can be gravitational force field that like the earth gives off that attracts things to it. Okay, so there's a little bit of a similarity there as well. Okay, now let's talk about how can you detect charge? How can you know if an object has a charge? Well, you can use a tool called an electroscope. This is used to detect the presence and also the magnitude of an electric charge. So in class, we can kind of demonstrate this, but let's say this is an electroscope, and let's say we have a rod that we have charged and it has a negative charge. When you bring that negatively charged object towards the electroscope, what happens is, remember, like charges repel. So all the electrons in this electroscope move away, and that leaves all the protons in the positively charged particles at the forefront. So then these are attracted, and then these are repelled, and then that's why, because these are the same charge, those leaves in the electroscope will separate because like charges repel. And if they're both negative, they're going to repel each other. So that's something we can see in an electroscope, which is a tool that's used to detect charge. Now let's talk back to materials. And this conversation will be reminiscent of what we talked about when we learned about thermal energy. We talked about heat in our energy unit. So some materials can transfer electric charge well and others do not. Just like we saw that some materials can transfer heat and others do not. So conductors are materials that allow electrons. They allow that electric charge to flow easily. You can say that they readily conduct electric charge. Okay, so this would be something like metals, especially copper and things like that we see inside of wires. but then also your skin, which is why you can experience shock when someone goes down a slide and then touches you. They transfer that electric charge to you through your skin. Insulators are materials that block the flow of electrons through them. Insulators hold their E tightly and don't let them flow easily. This is materials like glass, plastic, rubber. Okay, and this is why when we have wires, you'll often see that the inside of a wire is some sort of metal that will conduct the flow of electric charge. And then the outside of the wire is going to be a rubber or a plastic or something that's going to insulate the person who's touching the wire from the charge so that we don't get shocked every time we're plugging in our phone to charge it. Okay, that's very important in terms of how these wires are constructed so that we're using materials that will conduct electric charge as we need to charge our phone without shocking us or electrocuting us every single time that we touch it. All right, now let's talk more about this transfer of electric charge. So we said some materials will transfer electric charge well, others will not. Let's talk about ways that electric charge can be transferred. Okay, oftentimes we see it done 3 ways. Now the first two, some people will put the first two under the same definition, so they'll say there's only 2 ways, but I'm going to separate those out for us to just get a little bit more specific. So first, electric charge can be transferred by conduction. It's the transfer of those electrons through direct contact between objects. So electrons from one object moves to another object. In order for this to happen, that object must be a conductor to transfer that charge, but this can happen through that direct contact. Okay, another way that electric charge can be transferred is through friction. So it's the transfer of electrons through rubbing objects. Again, some people will argue that this is also, a charging by contact, a charging of conduction. But I like to separate them out specifically for rubbing. So this is where, let's say you're rubbing your feet along carpet as you walk in your socks, and then you touch your sibling and you shock them. Or you may have seen it in our exploring electricity stations when we use cloth to rub a rod or rub a comb or rub a balloon, or you rub the balloon along your pant leg. All of those things we're transferring electric charge through friction. And then lastly, we can see that charge can be transferred through induction. So this is a transfer of electrons through electric fields, and it's working over a distance. So a charged object can be brought near a neutral object, and that can cause polarization. So the electrons rearrange their positions, and then it induces a charge on that neutral object. Okay, we saw this in several of our stations, okay? You can see it here as well. So I charged this rod by friction, by rubbing it. It's electrically charged with a negative charge. When I bring it towards this object, remember those protons are held really tightly. They're not moving, but the electrons are held more loosely, so they can move. So the electrons are repelled from this negatively electric charge. So they move away. That induces a positive charge here on the forefront, and then thus those would be attracted to each other. Okay, so induction is another way that we can charge objects. Now, 2 more things I want to talk about before we wrap this up. First is a static discharge. This is the sudden transfer of electric charge between 2 charged objects due to a buildup of static electricity. And an example of this is lightning. So here is how it works. The movement of clouds and air currents in the sky, it causes a buildup of static electricity in the clouds. When that electron buildup becomes great enough, it will then induce a positive charge on Earth, let's say on this tree. Okay, so remember, like charges repel, so those electrons move away from each other, those opposite charges are attracted, those electrons and those protons, okay? Eventually, this attraction between those opposite charges will become so great that electrons will travel from the clouds to Earth to then neutralize that charge imbalance. And then the flash of light that you see is the result of the collisions between the atoms and the molecules in the air, and that collision emits light. Thunder is what we hear as a result from the heat in the air during a storm. It expands rapidly and it makes sound waves, and that's what we're hearing as thunder. But this is lightning, and this is an example of static discharge. Now, how do we remove charge or maybe control it? there's a process called grounding, which removes excess charge on an object and it transfers those electrons to another object to neutralize the electrical imbalance. The simpler way to say it is it's going to redirect charge to the ground, which is why it's called grounding, rather than a building. So it's providing a path for charge to reach Earth so it doesn't build up and then result in that static discharge. And then your house gets struck by lightning and catches fire, or the tree next to you gets struck by lightning. So that's why oftentimes, especially in tall buildings, we'll see some sort of rod that will then attract that, and then it will be conducted through a wire and then into the ground where it is then grounded. Because Earth is a massive neutral object. It can conduct charge though. So if you can connect an object to the Earth with a good conductor like a wire, it will then transfer that electric charge into Earth. And that's why buildings do that, so that it can redirect lightning from a building to Earth and not fry all of the circuits in a building. Okay, so that's an overview of charge. And now we're going to do some practice with it before we start talking about the flow of charge in the form of current.